Right. What an amazing day it is that we're starting out the first year of 2025, sharing truth with the world again. And so, welcome to any of you who do come along or who come along after and watch my teachings. You, you you know, sometimes if you have a desire or a need to go back and watch Saturdays, just be warned it's not there. Uh, I apparently used some verbiage that is not okay. So, you know, it was it ended 2 years ago, but they're still driving. uh, so, blessings and shalom to everybody. We're looking at an overwhelming past life regression from a young girl, I believe in the 1980s, somewhere in that time frame. And one of them that she's had in the past, she's had many lives as we all have, is finds itself in the position of being a male Essene uh, around the turn of the age, around 1 AD, maybe prior in BC or just after the beginning of AD, and so we've been learning little pieces here and there about how, and it's amazing to me because on one side there are many similarities that existed in that still exist here, and yet it's those little subtle things that most people won't even recognize that are different that are the make the largest impact. And so I think it's as it is with everything. Seeing and knowing in perspective will often give you a picture maybe that other people haven't quite yet been able to see. And so if that is the case, then wonderful. I would like to send a thank you out to those who have contacted me and said Happy New Year. Very, very nice, very, very nice courtesy to hear. And so, Source is working his plan. He's been speaking about it. He's spoken through many religious belief systems. He's spoken through many, many, many different people over different generations. And yet, when it's all said and done, it's still going to come to pass. And it is coming to pass all around us. Are we recognizing? Well, it goes to the piece that we were just talking about that I shared with you guys on Saturday. That scripture where Yeshua says that if you put a blind person and a person that has sight in a room and you cut all the light out, then they're no different. Understanding the metaphoric picture that people that are spiritually blind and people that aren't spiritually blind, when they are put in a place of darkness, that would be called negative energy. When you get inundated with that, it takes your spiritual side away. But the difference is immediately when the light begins to come back, or the higher frequency spirit force begins to manifest again, then the differences will yet again once appear, and the spirit person will begin to see what had been blocked, and unfortunately for the others, they're still blind. I hope that's not a place where any of you are. If you are, I don't know that it's the end of the world, but I would certainly encourage you that you might want to give that a really good thought and begin to search yourself. Inevitably in all of this stuff that's happening in the world with the veil thinning and the spirit increasing and the frequencies changing and people ascending, uh, if you've studied it at all, you know that there's still an opportunity no matter where we are, and there's also still an option no matter where we are. None of us may end up being on the same place at the same time, but inevitably we will have all, if we ascend, we will have all been at the same place sometime. And so the significance there is first off, once you've been in that place and you see somebody, help them. And secondly, if you're not in that place and you know it, it's okay. That's good. That's a blessing from Source that you recognize that you're not maybe where you want to be. And then just trust Him. And if you'll continue working the work, doing shadow work, and really shadow work can be defined as simply as looking inside yourself. So when we begin to look inside ourselves, we see things that we might not be all that tickled about, and we're then free to change them. Now, you may choose not to, and that's okay, I guess, but it doesn't bring very benevolent outcomes for you. And I'm looking for the benevolent outcome. I don't just want Source to bless me. I want Source to bless me for the best benevolent outcome. And I could share some stuff with you about people who have actually, if you want to, however you want to use it, religious-wise prophesied, spiritual-wise spoken through intuition or some other spirit force. They're both exactly the same thing. There's no difference. When I spoke words that came to pass and I was a Christian, it was still spirit force. We just called it something prophetic. It's still spirit force. And so that's something that has become relatively clear, that there are people who are under the bondage of Christianity and yet who are still arising lights even in that environment. Now, inevitably, Source seems to bring most of those people out of that environment, but that might take you 30 years like it did me. So there's hope for all of us. We're not lost and we're not doomed. We can fortify how great the blessings are, how quick they are, how good they are. We can do all of those things, and we certainly have that within our creative power of being an Elohim. So I hope that you guys will grab a hold that we are living in the middle. Many people that I've heard channel are trying to tell people that things are real good and they're going to get better, but there's also those who won't experience that, and you have to know that so that you know how to react when you encounter that. That's mostly what it's about, is us learning how do we separate ourselves, which those that have been with me know Source has been speaking that now for over 5 years. It's really not an if. Those that choose not to separate themselves from very low frequency people will constantly have a drain that lowers their frequency. On the other side, while you are there, if you will be the stronger one, then you can also be a light and a beacon to those people who have no light. But you can't make them change, and those are the blind people Yeshua was talking about. So in our book tonight, we've been reading, for those of you who might just drop out for whatever reason, we've been reading a book written by Dolores quite a few years ago. She created eventually a huge publishing company in Arkansas and has published many spiritual books. Well, this was her second or third book, and she encounters a person that she was the greatest founding person to take this whole system and put it into place, of recognizing that we can go into a trance just as Edgar Casey did. He just learned how to do it for himself. And the more you do it, the more you learn how it's easier and easier to fall in a trance, the more you work it. But that's also true of meditation. It's easier and easier to fall in a spirit trance in meditation if you continue practicing it. Now, it may not end the world for you, but it may slow down your spiritual abilities as well as your spiritual blessings. And so if you're looking for maximum blessing while you're getting maximum knowledge, then those things are really important. So tonight we're looking at, in Jesus and the Essenes, the life of Jesus. We are looking at initially the book of Ruth. So let's bring ourselves in community and in agreement. When you do this with other people, you center yourself, and of course the heart is always the center. And then we simply do a thing, and we bow to each other, and we exclaim Namaste. And so we'll take off, and we'll see here. I hope you guys understand that we really are in an amazing time. Can I tell you, it's not accidental that today would end up like this. There's actually something, I believe, a little more spiritual going on with all of the timing of all of this stuff happening. And so I hope you'll recognize the significance of spending the first day of a year in the middle of spiritual learning and preparation. If you do, then it will truly bless you. So we will take off. Dolores writes, during the session, when I was talking to Saudi as a child, I asked him what his favorite story was. And I was surprised when he said, I like of Ruth. And I thought this was a rather strange choice for a child to pick. I can think of lots of stories from our Bible that would seem more exciting to a youngster. And I asked him if he could relate it, and the following is a strange phenomena in itself. Usually a hypnotist has to ask lots of questions to keep the subject talking. They become so relaxed, there is always the possibility that they might drift off into natural sleep. And those that went with me, all of us had to deal with that. You get so relaxed, you're in such a state of peace that it's not uncommon in a past life regression with other people, like we did. It's not uncommon to hear people snoring. And so they become so relaxed, there is always the possibility they might drift off into a natural sleep. I have never had that happen, but it is a possibility. Katie had always been talkative while under anyway, but this time Saudi told his story and went 7.5 minutes without any interruptions. This is all flowing out of somebody in the 80s from, let's say, the year AD 1. So my point for saying that, for those of you who may not quite understand this whole process of past life regression and how it works, this information comes from your higher self, the one in you, and I actually believe it's through your higher self from the Akashic record. And you're actually mentally accessing who you are as a spirit light, and then a specific time on that line of me, the spirit light. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you, but it's very intense and it's huge, and every one of us are living it, whether you know it or don't. And so she says, I've never had this happen, but it is a possibility. Katie has always been talkative while under anyways. But this time Saudi told his story and went 7.5 minutes without any interruptions. I did not ask any questions or do any prodding to keep the story flowing. I believe this is some kind of record. If there are any other cases of this happening, it is another example of how closely Katie was identified with this personality of the past, who also was another body form, but her higher self. And Saudi told the story eagerly with the bubbly enthusiasm of a child wanting to share his knowledge. It is said that Naomi, her and her husband and her 2 sons went into the land of Moab to earn a living. So they left Israel and they went to Moab. You know, many times you hear about Moabites. And in doing so, these 2 sons grew up in age and decided to take wives. Now it is said in the scrolls that we must not take wives of other than what we ourselves are. So here is a minuscule, but it is in fact a reality, friends. A whole lot of the dogma of the Old Testament and the rules and the laws never applied until sometime in history. Okay? That is to say, we have proof historically of things that weren't that way, i.e., Israel, the Hebrews worship many gods, and then all of a sudden Jeremiah comes along, exposes the lies, and all of a sudden we now have one God who is actually the ruler of a pantheon of gods, and another God named Yahweh who is the minor in that pantheon of gods. So if you knew what I'm talking about, there are two gods tracking through the whole Old Testament, and unfortunately, most people have no idea that they're actually not the same two gods. I always thought that El was Yahweh. So I know that there's lots of people who do not understand, but you have to go study history to find those things out, and then it's right there in front of you. And so he tells the story eagerly with the bubbly enthusiasm. She goes, and as you'll see, there's no condemnation of them. There's no negative things like you read and you might see in the story of Ruth. If you believe that it was sin for them to marry Moabites, you will think that this is sin. If you have no knowledge of that, you'll never get that out of this story. And so it is with many of these things that have come out. And so now it is said in the scrolls that we must not take wives of other than what we ourselves are. But they spoke with the priest about it, and they were told as long as they, the women, have accepted Yahweh as their God, they would be allowed to marry. So he just blew off the total rule system of Judaism. The priest had the power to make rules. Oh, does anybody see that? So they picked the two wives that they would choose to marry, and they happened to be sisters. One was Ruth, and I cannot remember her sister's name just now. Anyways, so it came to pass that several years had passed, and there was a great sickness amongst the people, and Naomi's husband sickened and died, and also her two sons. And she decided she would go back into her land, which was Israel, taking with her what few possessions she had and going back to her people. Then she told her daughters that they were young and they should stay here and marry and be among their own people. And Ruth's sister here agreed to go back to her parents' house, but Ruth told her that when she left the house of her parents, she was no longer their daughter and that Naomi was her family. Therefore, whither she would go, also Ruth would. And Naomi kept saying, "No, no, you cannot do this. It is strange. Our people are different." And Ruth says, "Do I not follow Yahweh as your people?" And she says, "Yes." "And do I not observe the laws?" And she says, "Yes. Therefore, I am one of you." And so she decided that rather than go alone, for it would be a very hard journey, they would go together, and they went together, and they made it home. And when they got there, of course, everyone mourned for the fact that Naomi was without a husband and had no sons to carry on the name. She went back to her house, and they were not really poor, but not having very much money for things to eat or anything. And such is how they lived for a while. And Naomi had a cousin whose name was Boaz, who was a leading man in his community. He was of the house of David and very important and a very righteous man and good. And he owned many fields. And Naomi sent Ruth out to the fields for gleaning, which was allowed, and told her that this would be a good thing to do, knowing that this would catch the attention, for even though they were poor, it is to bring shame upon the house to show them up, that they are living in the same town with cousins, and they must go to the fields to glean. Therefore, the attention would be brought upon them, and she was hoping that something would happen of this. Or perhaps many say that she knew of it and therefore caused it to happen. Intuition? Most probably. But anyways, so she went out into the fields and was gleaning, and the overseers tried to discourage her. And she said that according to the law, she had the right to do this because they are the leaves that have been left. And this came to the attention of Boaz, and he found that she was his cousin, being married to his cousin. Therefore, they were of a family, and he, seeing their problems, sent many food things to their house so that they would not have to do this. Now, there was another closer cousin who, if Ruth wished to marry, would have to marry, because it is the law that the nearest male relative to the man who dies childless must take his wife if he is unwed. Here's a piece that very possibly existed at one time. We are told that his brother. I've never, in all of my reading, do I recall that I ever heard that it was the nearest family member. So it's really much bigger than just the brother's lineage, which is all that you've been told in the Christian Bible. But here we have a narrative that says the law was actually more broad than that it wasn't the brothers. I'm sure the brothers would have had the first option. But after that, the brother wasn't the only source for a woman to find a husband according to the law of Israel at this time. And so I love the way that he speaks it, because it is the law that the nearest male relative to the man who dies must take his wife if she is unwed. And he could not stand the thought that she was a Moabite, pronounced Moabite, and different from his family. But also he could not stand that perhaps Boaz wanted Ruth for himself. Therefore he was in a quandary. If he said that he would take her for his wife, he would have someone who was kin and not of his own. But if he let Boaz have her, he knew that this was what Boaz wanted. So he could not decide, and therefore the challenge was made. The challenge in front of the judge, that he must either accept her as his wife or to give him his sandal, which is to say that the bargain has been struck and they have decided that this will pass. This is so that it will be legal and the sandal is passed, and therefore he was shamed into doing this thing in front of the people. Because he would not, there was no way, even to spite Boaz, that he would take a wife that was so much fuss had been made over. And she was foreign and different and things like that. So therefore they lived and grew. It is from the meeting of Ruth and Boaz that the house of David was formed. They are very important. They are my people. Their house and their son was, let me think, it was, David was their grandson, their son's son, and it goes on from there. This was the entire 7.5 minutes spoken without interruption. Why? Dolores asked, why is that your favorite story? Saudi responds, they are the story of my family. And this was the beginning of our house, ancestral line or family tree. So we now find a piece of information that this guy is actually of the house of David, just like Yeshua was. So that would tell you, if he's of the house of David, and Yeshua and Yehukanan the Immerser, which are both of the house of David, then this guy that lives in Qumran as an Essene is a family member of Yehukanan the Immerser and Yeshua HaMashiach. That's an interesting take. And so Dolores asks, was Ruth happy with the decision, or do the scrolls say? Saudi responds, yes, she was happy, because it is said that part of it, she went out and made herself known to Boaz so that he would know that this was her choice. This is part of everything also. And together they broke bread, and it was decided, and then they went through the public rescinding of rights. Well, if she hadn't come back with Naomi, she would never have met him. Saudi responds, she would have. It would have been one way or the other. And so oftentimes, and it's really funny because in my journey I'm seeing a lot of these pieces even without this. Oftentimes when we begin to, and I don't know if you have, maybe you haven't, it's not the end of the world, but there's certainly a lot of benefit to it. Beginning to recognize that the things that both come into your life, go out of your life, that those things have a purpose. That's why you've been hearing me tell you that we really need to learn how to give the value to the bad things that happen to us. And certainly, if it's karma coming back on us, well, there's still a lesson in it for us to learn. If no other lesson, then don't do it again. Because if you do it again, now you know what you get for it. Okay? So But everything has a purpose. Somebody asked me recently, and maybe I can help somebody. Everybody's walking around talking about they don't know what their purpose is, but they know they're here. They know there's a purpose, but they don't have any clue about what that purpose is. Maybe you are in that state. And I hope that I will at least give you something to think about how this all works. And the purpose of you being here is to seek and find that which you lack. But see, you can't seek and find that which you lack if you refuse to look inside, because you really have no clue about what you lack in the first place. Why is shadow work important? It's important because you need to see the things that are affecting your life. And if you can't see them, then you also will be blind. And even if the light comes on, it's not going to help you. Do you see how all of this works together? It's all purpose, it's all place, it's all plan, it's all intentional. Source will send the answer you need from the weirdest places sometimes. And if you're not spiritually attuned with yourself, you will have somebody speak the answer that has nothing to do with your belief system. And if you do, then you'll know that was for me from Source. I've done this in the last 3 months, probably 10 times. The answer comes from somebody I don't even know. And it's like, well, of course, that's exactly what he's trying to say to me. It actually is really quite simple when you begin to awaken the universe. I'm going to say this to you for your blessing. The universe is what we are talking about that is watching over us. And if you get that revelation in your mind, immediately you will begin to then understand that everything that happens to you, the universe sent to you so that you could learn what it is that you need to learn, which is the purpose of humanity. Why do we come here? To learn what we lack. If you don't know what you lack, it's a pretty good sign you're going to walk right past it when it comes. That's a lot, but it is a lot. It's huge. What I just said to you is huge. And so, it's so crazy because this just flows from this guy, these metaphysical truths that I've been sharing with y'all, whether in the Kabbalion, whether in Patanjali's writings. They're from thousands of miles apart, totally different belief systems teaching the exact same thing. Has anybody seen that pattern? It doesn't matter what name you put on it. The core truths are the same in every belief system that has existed for the last 25,000 years. All right, enough about that. So, Saudi responds, she would have. He is very much confident that Source has the capability of either putting the people that we need in front of us or putting us in front of the people that we need, according to the universe's benevolent towards us. You ought to learn the affirmation of saying it every day. The universe loves me and will show me today that what I need today. And if you'll do that, and even more than just doing that, if you will begin to believe that inside of you, you will start depending on the universe, which is everything. You will start depending on the universe to bring to you the things you need. And so, are there things like this preordained that people get together? See, she has a different tweak from where he is. Let's see if he explains it. If there are debts that must be paid, whether they be for good or for bad, they must be paid. What is Saudi talking about? He's talking about karma. He knows totally what karma is. He calls it debt. And therefore, these things will happen. Oh, I'm sorrowful. Can I say that my words are identical to what he's speaking right now? He says, and we must learn from them. And learn not to challenge them, which fits with exactly what I said that I've been watching in my life with Source when I began to declare out loud and very loud inside of me that universe, send me today those things that I need. Now that may sound weird and out there, and it's okay. I don't really care if people think that I've lost my marbles and I'm off my rocker. I'm telling you, I'm watching this stuff happen. It does work exactly as we've been told it does. People who think they're smart and know the answers never get to experience this. The greatest thing you can do is become like a child, a little bit of humble kid who doesn't have any information, and begin to walk your life in that manner. And I guarantee you the universe will dump more on you than you can ever imagine. For this causes much heartache and much pain. If you would just make the best of the situations, and I'll add in there all situations. All situations, good and bad. And learn from them, there is incredible good to be had. Does it not sound like me and this guy are preaching the exact same message to you? I did not get an opportunity because I've been really busy. I did not get an opportunity to pre-read this part tonight. Quite amazing that I would speak my heart and it matches exactly with their heart. Just not fight it is called in modern New Age, go with the flow. 3,000 years ago, they were saying, go with the flow. Just don't fight it. Let the universe bring and do what the universe desires to do. There's a statement. You have to believe that the universe has your best interest. If you don't believe that, you still get what you believe. Did you hear it? What you're getting is based on what you believe. So just not fight it and go along with it, was Dolores' statement, and Saudi responds, yes. Chapter 15, Moses and Ezekiel. The story of Moses was well known and important to Saudi since he was a master and a teacher of the Torah, which contained the laws of Moses. I obtained many pieces of this story during 3 different sessions, and I have combined them together, and they fit very well. They contain more strange differences than any other Bible story I have received from Saudi, different but yet plausible. Okay? So she's trying to set the stage, just as I showed you, that there's only a very small amount of the first 5 books of the Bible that is verified as something that has come from Moses. Everything else has no name as to who wrote it. And Moses did not write all of it. That came out that Moses wrote it all because they had no other way to prove that he didn't. But you don't write second and third person pieces about yourself in first person context. That's not the way humans function. So this came out of 3 different sessions. Even from the beginning, it was not like our biblical version. We have been taught from Sunday school and the story of the baby Moses being born of a Hebrew woman, hidden in a basket in the bulrushes until the daughter of Pharaoh found him and raised him as her own child in the palace. The following is the story as Saudi told it. So I think it's safe. If you disagree, it's okay. I don't mind you disagreeing. My belief is that this guy is speaking from a first century belief system. His mother was princess in Egypt. That's pretty significantly different than some peon Hebrew slave. We have heard the story that he was born to a Hebrew woman. Saudi immediately responds with exclamation point, no! Uh-oh. Friends, are you thinking already? He was born to a Hebrew father. His voice showed aggravation. This was the story that was circulated around in later years to protect her from a Hebrew child and a Hebrew father. Moses was the son of the daughter of Pharaoh. Now, if that don't make your teeth hit in your jaw hit the floor, how many things like this have I exposed to you guys? How we've been lied and how the Bible has been corrupted. Why was this something that had to cover up? So he tells us they even had a reasoning knowing the version that we have. He knew the version that we have, but he says that's not the truth. So why was this something they had to cover up? For the same reason, you could ask the question, why did Christianity have to cover up Gnosticism? Why am I reading Gnostic scriptures to you that are attributed to Yeshua, and Christianity, Jesus never says those words? Because they had to deceive you. They had to hide from you. Because at that time, the Hebrews were all slaves in Egypt. Though Moses was of noble descent, 'tis said that he was of the house of Joseph, pronounced Yosef. So we know that if that is right, then the father was, in fact, of Moses, according to this, which is totally different than anything I've ever heard, that he was a direct lineage of Abraham. None of that is in the Bible, friends. Not in this concept. And it certainly wasn't that princess that found that basket in the bulrushes was his daddy's concubine. Why, that might have been unholy if he had more than one wife, Brother Rob. Don't you know that polygamy thing is bad? Greatest spiritual teacher that the Creator gave the words of righteousness on this earth was birthed out of a polygamy relationship. Pretty interesting. Have we come a long ways? Maybe not. He was again of a Hebrew slave in Egypt. I think the story was for her protection that it is said that the child was found. It was said that he was found from the river in a boat of rushes. It is not the truth. He was raised in the house of Pharaoh. Did anything happen later that make him leave? According to the Bible story, this is Dolores. According to the Bible story, after he was grown, he accidentally became a murderer. And when the Pharaoh discovered this, he wanted to slay Moses. But Moses fled in the wilderness to escape his wrath. Again, Saudi's version disagrees. He was not made to leave. He discovered that his father was a slave. And his father being a slave, he also was a slave. And said that he would live with his people. It was part of the training that was to stand him to good, so that he would be able to withstand what was to face him. Our stories seem to be a little bit different. We've heard that he went out into the wilderness. Saudi's response. He was sent into the wilderness for daring to love Princess Nefertiti, who was to be the wife of Pharaoh. For this he was sent into the wilderness. This was after he decided to become a slave. If he was still Prince Moses, he would not have been sent into the wilderness. Ramses knew that Nefertiti loved Moses and was jealous. Therefore he decided that to send one into the desert was to kill one. Therefore he believed he had done away with Moses. He did not know that the hand of Yahweh was on him. Nothing, on the whole of it, nothing And I have to tell you, it bears more witness with me the context of of what he's speaking than the Bible ever has. So therefore he believed he had done away with Moses. He did not know that the hand of Yahweh was on him. How did he learn of his destiny if he was in the wilderness? I was thinking of our story of God speaking to him from the burning bush. Saudi responds, I do not know. I was not there. I have heard that he was visited by angels. I have heard that he just opened himself up to his higher self. Wow. How do we hear and see spiritual things? Only when you open yourself to your higher self. We already possess knowledge and all the psychic gifts. I've heard that he just opened himself up to his inner being, the one I keep talking about all the time, the higher self. There are many stories. I believe a lot of it had to do with he just could not stand it. He was free and happy, and his people were slaves in Egypt. Our story says something about a burning bush. Saudi says, I have heard of this one saying that God visited him as a burning bush, and he sighs. It sounds rather strange to me. Why would God burn one of his own bushes in order to gain attention of a mere mortal? Would he not just say, I am Yahweh and you will listen to me? I believe that he spoke to Moses' soul and Moses listened. Some people have it very difficult believing that someone can hear God inside. They must have some outward expression to say, yes, God has spoken to me. To hear God, one must just open the heart and he is there. In every breath, in every moment. And one must just listen. It was said by a spiritual person to me that the reason I hear Source so much is because my heart desires to hear Source. Of course, this seems to be too easy for most people to accept. I asked if he had the story of the Red Sea and whether it was the same as the story we were accustomed to. Saudi responds, who knows? Do you mean when they crossed the Red Sea? 'Twas said in some tellings that the sea was parted, but this was not true. The truth of it was they just crossed. They had the ability to. How do I say? That through the thoughts and efforts of all, that the energy just uplifted them, so that it is said that even their feet did not get wet. Yet again, another totally different perspective of the same thing, which has to do with our higher spiritual self, not a carnal walking across on the land. Friend, if New Age is wrong and is so wrong to you and Christianity is right, you might need to pray that Source will open your eyes, because I promise you they're welded shut at this point. Do you mean that they walked on the top of water or floated above the water? I'll show you another little principle you're going to see here. I'm quite convinced that you're going to see a picture, and it's not going to be different than the picture of someone in the Sea of Gennesaret that went cruising past the boat. What if we really are and do have the spiritual ability inside of us? It's just so clouded and we're so blind and we're so ignorant to the truth of what we really are that we can't function yet in the spirit realm enough to be able to do all of the things that these people were functioning in. If you'll remember right in the New Testament, Yeshua makes a statement. He said, I want you to do greater things than I did. Do you know what he was really telling you? He desires for you to be more enlightened even than he was. That's a totally different message than Christians' message of that. They don't want you to know that you are an L. That's why they have no explanation when they read the Bible to you where Jesus said, "Do you not know that you are a mighty one?" He wasn't being kind, friend. That was a condemning rhetorical statement because they were blind and ignorant. They had no exposure of their light. When he tells them to go up on the hill and take the basket off, he really means it. This is beautiful. I'm so glad I went through Christianity because I wouldn't get this at all if I hadn't have seen that live. So, yes, some could say that the waters parted such that when they took a step, that they did not touch the water. He became frustrated at his inability to explain this satisfactorily. To put the energy to walk upon the water, or however you want to say this, is with nature. It is not against nature. Do you know why they kill the Indians as pagans? Because they believed in Mother Earth and Father Spirit, which is the correct understanding. You are just enforcing, putting energy so that the surface is solid that you see. So in other words, if we are walking in our higher self, we simply, and I've been learning about this as well, we simply can look at something and our mind will send the commandments out with nary word said. To go against it is to cause something else to fall out of place and to cause great harm and great damage. We are taught at the community to use energy in these ways. So he was taught in the religious community of the day, the Essenes and Qumran, he was taught what everybody in New Age movement is trying to find. Wow! And people can't figure out what they're going to believe. We are taught at the community to use energy these ways. With faith, anything is possible. You haven't heard anything that this guy said that disagrees with the teachings I've been showing you. Not one word that he said. In fact, he's saying exactly what I've been saying. You must believe. What are we told by Paul? All things are possible to those who believe. You must believe. On and on and on and on and on and on. So these words are not conflicting. They're all agreeing with each other. Yeshua told us that we were supposed to be doing supernatural works. This guy says, yeah, we know. We were taught how to use the energy that we are to change physical substances. Why can't we speak to a mountain? Because you don't know how yet. But I also believe Source is going to teach us how. But there were many, many people crossing the sea. Do you think they all believed? Sadi responds, no. But enough did that they accomplished this and the others followed after. But the people of Pharaoh did not have the faith or the ability to do this. And therefore, when they had took a step, they just went whoosh to the bottom. Which is the identical thing that Yeshua did at the Sea of Galilee when he went trucking. I understand why Christianity wouldn't want you to know that, friend. You might actually endeavor to believe these things that I'm exposing, and you might all of a sudden begin to be powerful. If you could learn how not to be so carnal. And that's for all of us, because we were taught how to be carnal. Now we got to learn how to not be carnal. That's a hard journey. But we can do it. I believe in us. We can do it. Even though I did not understand what was so obvious and simple to him, I proceeded to another mystery connected with Moses, the Ark of the Covenant. So Dolores Sadi says, it is the Ark of Moses' covenant with God. Yes, it is, how do I say this? A channel in which to communicate with his belief system is Yahweh. I can assure you the one that he's considering and calling Yahweh is source. It is part of the communication. It is also part of an energy exchange, all of which I've talked about extensively over the last 6 months. It is said that it held all of the secrets of the world and the universe. How many times have I talked about the Akashic Record and all of that? It's right here, friend. Every New Age thing there is right here. Because New Age is not new. It's just new to the world as we know it now. And so Dolores asked, it has been said that it contained the 10 Commandments. Saudi responds, the books are there, yes, but it is said, like I say, a channel to Yahweh. It is part of something that was once much greater in another time. So there is a time, we know that's true. It happened all the way back to the Atlanteans, they believe. That would be roughly 24,000 years ago. We are coming to the end of the 24,000 year cycle, even right now, just as the Mayans predicted and many other cultures have predicted the cycle that we, all of us, are a part of, and yet people are so resistant to what doesn't feel comfortable to them. If you feel comfortable going in and doing your little do for Christianity, then this is gonna feel weird. So in another time, these people functioned in this. And we were allowed to keep some of the secrets. And in this manner, you may learn the secrets of everything. I already possess all knowledge. I just got to find me. The Levi keep the secrets of the ark. They are the sons of Aaron. Where's the ark now? And does it still exist? Saudi responds, it is protected. They, the Levi, have kept the secrets among them. It is said that in the time of Babylon and later that several times it was captured by kings and emperors who wished to bend the power to their will. And in so doing, their kingdoms fell, and the ark was again put in hiding many times. And it is again gone into hiding. This was a gift. The knowledge was given to Moses and Aaron to build this, and then Yahweh realized basically that man was not ready for this. And therefore, man must be protected from this. The energy was too great. So when you hear me talk about us energetically, that we are ascending and we are arising and we are awakening, friends, all of those things are real, and they have existed in the past. This is a new movement for our time. It's not a new movement on the course of the whole earth. Ponder this. They know scientifically that Neanderthal and Homo sapien existed on this earth at the same time, and that time was a 500,000 years ago. It's kind of hard to fit 5,000 literal years in there, isn't it? 5,000 years versus 500,000 years that humanity has existed. Yeah, we've been lied to on a major scale. And so the Ark of Covenant, the knowledge was given to Moses and Aaron to build this, and then Yahweh realized basically that man was not ready for this, and therefore man must be protected from this. The energy was too great. Can the ark be destroyed? Saudi responds, no, never. It is only by an act or a will of God that it may be destroyed. It is protected by the Levi. Dolores asks, I've always heard that the ark is dangerous. Saudi responds, to those who have not pure hearts and right intentions. So when I tell you that you set intentions, friends, I don't think that we're still yet awake even enough to begin to understand that these magnificent things that I keep saying to people that mean nothing are alive and real and have much power. Your intentions have everything to do with what happens to you. You might ought to really open your heart and think about that. Yes, it would kill you if you weren't pure and you didn't have the right intentions. If you have selfishness, you have greed, you have self-centeredness. If you have those things, your heart's not pure and your intentions won't be right, and the ark will kill you. The guy that reached out and touched the ark, that is actually a metaphoric picture to those know of an unclean man touching a holy object. That's why he died. Not because he tried to steady the ark. So the knowledge has already been given to humanity. That's why there are many scholars who have studied their whole life will tell you that Moses was a shaman. He was a witch doctor. He did supernatural power. He cast spells. He spoke words. But wouldn't it look like that also if you were Yeshua walking across the water? See, the truth is there's no difference. That's why Yeshua knew Moshe. And that's why he knew Eliyahu, because Eliyahu was the same thing. The Elijah of the Bible was a medium, if you would use that term lightly. So the ark then is good to those who are good, and it's death to those who are not. Wow. So the energy level of this is so great that it could cause your heart to stop and your mind to cease to function, to no longer inhabit the body, which would mean it would be very similar to a death experience. We now are being blessed because of science and the time we are in history to actually get to see and hear about near-death experiences, which is when something so traumatic happens that your spirit checks out of your physical body and can come back and get back in that physical body. Very, very similar. Now you think about things in the New Testament where Peter says you must put off this horrible garment of body that you live in. You must put it off and become a new being. Those are all metaphysical teachings, friends. They were teaching this all over Israel. So she then asked, is this why Yahweh thinks man is not ready for it? Saudi responds, because for many years man tried to bend it to his will, to do what he wished it to do. It is said that he who had this would rule the world. That is why it is hiding. Will man ever be ready for something like that? Saudi responds, who am I to judge? It can only be hoped for. So he's hoping for the enlightenment and the awakening that's coming. 3,000 years he was hoping that people would get to see what he knows about and what he's lived in and what he's functioned in. Who am I to judge? It can only be hoped for. It is said that many people were killed by this. At one time, it was in the inner sanctuary of the Temple of Solomon, but the power of it almost destroyed the inner sanction, and it was hidden from there also. A piece which you will never learn anywhere else. There's not one recorded text that I have ever heard of that has that the Ark of the Covenant was destroying the temple that Solomon built because of its energy. That's crazy amazing. So Dolores asked, do you think the Ark of the Covenant had something to do with their ability to cross the Red Sea? Saudi responds, the Ark was not there. It was not made until in the 40 years of wandering. It was later made in which to store the tablets and the papyri of the laws. Moses made the exterior, the kelu, brought the energy source to put inside. So we do find who made the Ark of the Covenant. Was it a Holodab and Abinadab, or the guys that the false Torah tells you made the Ark of the Covenant? No, it wasn't. It's exactly what I showed you in the Moses scroll, that source told Moshe to build an ark. He didn't say a word about making it out of gold. It was supposed to be a simple box made out of acacia wood. Those were the requirements, not millions of dollars worth of gold. The Ark of the Covenant people are looking for, even if it does exist, is not the Ark of the Covenant. And so Dolores asked, do you think the Ark of the Covenant had something to do with their ability to cross the Red Sea? And he says, the ark was not there. It was not made until in the 40 years of wandering. He's absolutely correct. It was later made in which to store the tablets, which is what was supposed to go in it, and the papyri of the laws, which was most probably the Moses scroll, the 10 words. Moses made the exterior, the kalu brought the energy source to put inside. Once again, what? The energy source. Is anybody hearing this? It was a tangible energy force that existed on this earth, which was an extension of our Creator source. Is what these people were functioning in. People have changed the story so much. Our stories are not the same as yours. Saudi says, it is said that every time a man tongue tells a tale, that it embroiders a little from this. Yes. So every time a scribe writes a scroll, he changes something. If you have 1,000 scribes that change 1,000 somethings, you've changed the story. And so, according to our biblical versions, after they crossed the Red Sea, the Hebrews were led by a cloud of smoke by day and a cloud of fire by night. Saudi had never heard this story. Doesn't exist. It is said that the staff of Moshe, upon it had a great crystal. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Oh, don't put them crystals on you. They ain't got no power. Woo! And it would glow, and this would tell the direction to go. It's a little bit different story, huh? A little metaphysical there for the shaman Moses. This was another surprise. According to this story, if they were going in the correct direction, the crystal would glow. And when they deviated from the path, it would dim. And that is also for us a metaphoric picture. When source is causing us to glow, we're walking in the right path. And when we're not, we are low frequency. And you should always learn to how, when you're starting to go in a negative frequency, you're leaving the proper path. The straight and narrow path can always be followed and always be true. It has to do with the glow of the Spirit that resides in you. It is said that during part of the journey, when they wandered away for so long, that the wandering was caused because Moses had lost faith and started to go in the direction that the people wished him to. Wow. No matter how powerful you are, when people want to manipulate you, if they say enough words, eventually a person in leadership will piss everybody off or he will follow them. Now, I know that the Yehudim does not want you to know that Moses started following the people and he's the reason they spent 40 years wandering, because he lost his way. I know you don't want to hear that. That he had lost the great faith that enabled him to do what he had done. And the dissenters were saying, no, you are leading us wrong. You will do as we wish. We will go here. And this time is when they lost the way. Then it is said that he no longer could stand the fact that he knew they were lost and his people were dying and suffering, and he prayed to Yahweh that he would again follow him if he would just save the people, and it is said that he again would guide him. So then what happened? Moshe had to recognize the shadow that was going on inside of him, that he was scared of the people, and he had to what? He had to stand back up in front of the television and tell people truth, and if everybody left him, he had to keep telling the truth. And it took all the courage that a human can muster if you're telling the truth. It's easy to lie to people, but it ain't easy to tell people the hard truth. There is also the story of people finding food and water by miraculous means to sustain them while they were wandering in the wilderness. It is said that the manna grew on the trees. They said it was like bread, which is manna. This is why it is called this. There are bushes in the wilderness that have the seeds. When they break open, they have something that is, how do I explain this? It is very good to eat. It will sustain life. It is said that it was on these that they would live. I have never seen the bushes, so I do not know. And where these bushes were, they were able to strike the ground with the staff, and water would come so that they would have drink. So we now have the water, and we now have the food. And neither story is what you've known. Did Moses' staff have any special properties? It was used to perform many wonders. Saudi responds, Moses found his staff. It is said it was able to find water and things, but any staff will do that if properly used. So it was not about the staff. Any stick Moses would have picked up would have had the exact same powers. Friends, I don't know if you guys understand any of this stuff, but I have to tell you, this that we're reading is closer to the truth than anything you've ever heard. All of it speaks of the same thing that you hear me preach constantly. We are greater than we have any clue of. We have all kinds of psychic powers and abilities. We have all kinds of mental capabilities, and yet we know zero about them. I said this recently, and it'll get coined. You'll hear somebody else eventually that will use this same statement. They got it from me. Christianity taught you there was a spirituality. They just taught you nothing about what it was. And you can see that they taught these stories, but none of them teach you that it's about you. Everything Saudi has said has tracked 100% true. It is about you and the energy that is in you, in your higher self. Wow. So that's where we come up with manna. And where these bushes were, they are able to strike the ground with the staff, and water would come so that they would have drink. Dolores, does Moses' staff have any special properties? It was used to perform so many wonders. Moses found his staff. It is said that it was able to find water and things, but any staff will do that if properly used. It is said that the crystal was something that was handed down many generations, that Abraham brought it with him. Y'all never even knew there was a crystal on the end of this staff, much less this thing lineages back to Abraham, a Chaldean pagan. So Abraham brought it with him, and it was passed down, and Joseph took it with him into Egypt to the land of Pharaoh. And there afterwards it was when the captivity started. It was then passed down from father to son. It is said that his father, who was a Hebrew, gave the crystal to him when he became a man. It is said that for a time he wore it about his neck. I wonder why Yosef, the supernatural guy, wore a crystal around his neck. There's a reason why my jewelry making company makes crystals, viable ground mined crystals for people to wear around their necks and wear around their hands, the action of their power. So you know there's a significant reason. And so, look at this. It is said that for a time he wore it about his neck. It is something that was, I'm going to use the term source. It was source's crystal. Of course, everything is sources. Therefore, it was protected. Do you think Moses knew how powerful it was? Saudi responds, I'm not Moses, I cannot say. And we laughed. It is said that when Joseph first came into Egypt, that the Hebrews were greatly honored, and then they became so many that many of the Egyptians became jealous, and a lot of them were thrown into bondage. And it was from these that came the people who crossed the sea, who followed Moses. It was their descendants, these descendants of the people of Joseph. How was Moses able to make Pharaoh let the people go? Saudi responds, Pharaoh was his brother. They were raised together. He was able to convince him through different methods, and some say witchcraft. I'm going to use the term shamanism, but they're exactly the same thing. All of the power that we have spiritually came to humanity, was passed to Egypt, and was passed from Egypt. There's many texts that I've seen of why it is that there was such an issue in the Bible against the Egyptians. It actually was against the knowledge, the Kabbalion knowledge, the knowledge of Trismegistus, all of the things, some of which I've already shown you, all of those things came out of Thoth, which came out of Egypt 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 years ago. And they can't have you knowing that, because you might accidentally realize who you really are, and all of a sudden begin to find peace with your life and with your universe, and quit worrying about that you need to be saved, and understand that your purpose here is for you to learn the things that you did not possess on the other side of the veil, so that you can become a more complete spirit. So how was Moses to make the Pharaoh let people go? And he had already told us that Pharaoh and him, they show you a picture of that, but it's not that they're brothers. One's a son and one's a bastard child. And if you watch Game of Thrones, you know by Jon Stone what that differentiates amongst royalty. I had heard of the plagues of Egypt since childhood and always thought them fascinating. They are found in Exodus 7 through 12. Maybe this would be a chance to explore their meaning from Saudi's point of view. There are 10 mentioned in the Bible. 1, the river water turns to blood. 2, frogs. 3, lice. 4, flies. 5, murrain, which is a plague or a disease of animals. 6 is boils. 7 is hail mixed with fire. 8 is locust, 9 is darkness, 10 is death of the firstborn, resulting in the institution of the Passover. Dolores says, were the plagues real? Saudi says, yes, but a lot of it was, Moses was a very intelligent man. He's being very kind. The last plagues in which they said that the sky darkened and the waters ran red, it is said that when the sky darkened, he knew that upstream he had been made aware of the knowledge that the volcano had exploded. He had difficulty with that word, and the fear of the waters running red. He knew that in a couple of days this would happen because upstream, this is the color of the land. And if there would come into the river, the waters would run red. It was made known to him. There are supposedly the locusts and things. I do not know whether they all occurred. I do know that some of them were just being informed of the fact that certain things were happening. And Dolores asked, a very clever man, then you think much of it was not really the wrath of Yahweh? Saudi responds, until the last, no. In which the starting of the Passover, it was, yes. This was done that Yahweh promised that an angel of death would be sent. This does not sound like the God that I know to be vengeful, but nor does it sound like the God that I know of to slay all the men upon the face of the earth as he did when he spoke to Noah and told him to build the great ark. This does not sound like my God, but these are what we have been told. In very kindness, I would say to you, even though I would say he never in his lifetime came to the understanding, what he's telling you when he says that does not sound like my God, he's recognizing that Yahweh is not his God and that there is another God, but he doesn't know how to voice it. That's why he said, that doesn't sound like my God. That doesn't sound like my God. So, he did when he spoke to Noah and told him to build the great ark. This does not sound like my God, but these are what we have been told. It is said that there was a plague of the boils. It is said that this was part of the death that is brought with the rats. The painting of the doorways, I think this has a lot to do with the fact that the Israelites were kept healthy rather than the Egyptians being struck down. I think that they thought themselves immune. Yes, the story says that they painted the doorways and this made the angel of death pass over. This is what is said. I have also heard that they hung different herbs about the houses. That's still going on today. Then you think it is a disease that was carried by rats and boils were one of the symptoms. Yes, that is what I have been told. This is what our teachers think, that this is a very good possibility. It was only supposed to strike the firstborn. No, it was not just the firstborn. It struck the firstborn in half of the people in Egypt. It is said that when Moses told Pharaoh, he said that it would strike down his firstborn. It did not say that he would strike the firstborn of all. It just said that this was what he saw and that this is what would happen. He did not curse it. He just foretold it. So, contrary to the way we've been done, wasn't any different than Joseph getting a download from source. I've gotten many downloads from source and have many more to come. And when you get that information and foreknowledge of something, it's always right. Our story is that Yahweh did it to make the Pharaoh release the people. I think it had as much to do with Yahweh as it had to do with man. But Moses, with a little bit of foreknowledge, a man can do much. And so Dolores asked, you said he used witchery too. Saudi responds, this is what some people would call it, yes, the being able to see what will happen before it occurs. You've already told us that there are masters in the community who have this ability. Could Moses have been a master trained in this? Saudi responds, it is very possible. It is said that his father was a priest of the faith, and of course his mother was the princess of Egypt. He was taught by not only the Hebrew priest, but he was also the priest of Egypt. He was half Egyptian. Why would he not be taught in this manner? And so something as simple as that eradicates many, many things. It makes them no longer plausible. They're concoctions, they're overwritings, they're agendas to make one people look good and another people look bad. So it is amazing what can happen when you introduce an original idea to an open mind. I was suddenly able to look at things I had taken for granted all my life in a new light, and as you should be able to. The idea was radical, but could it possibly be to explain the plagues of Egypt in this way? Saudi said the river ran red from the disturbance upstream. The Bible says the water stank and people could not drink from it. Could this have been caused by the volcano spewing sulfur into the river? Any country dweller can tell you this natural chemical will make a well undrinkable, and sulfur water can certainly stink. The frogs left the river and overran the land. This could have also been caused by the changes taking place. Animals are very sensitive to nature. When all the frogs died, the Egyptians heaped them into stinking piles. Thus, the plague of flies could have occurred literally by their attraction to the dead frogs. He said the darkness was a result of the volcano, and this could also explain the hail mixed with fire. This phenomena has been known to occur during volcanic eruptions, friends. Saudi said the plague then resulted in the death of the people and instituted the Passover with the disease caused by the rats. This would explain the plague of lice, because it is known that fleas carry the germs of the Black Plague. The disease of the animals and the boils as symptoms in humans could all be related. The plague of locusts could have been a natural occurrence or as a result of the volcano disturbing the atmosphere. It is strange how it all falls into place and must be considered as possible, yet it never even occurred to us until Saudi introduced the idea. I'll tell you one of the things that Source has been doing. We must learn how to change our perspectives. Did you notice that he didn't need to change, per se, the things that went on, but how your picture and what your mind, if you're awake, what your mind is doing right now, it's running at about 1,000 miles an hour. I know mine is. And it's running at about 1,000 miles an hour because you're looking for things that don't line up. And I have to tell you, you will find more things from the biblical part that don't line up than you will from what that man told us through somebody else. What he just told you makes sense on every level. Still supernatural. It's been quite surprising. So, we're not quite there, but we are past, and we will pick up next week if Source wills, and you guys choose to come back. I hope you're blessed. I hope you experience all the goodness. Source does want us to be blessed. None of this, it might be a little difficult, but none of this is meant to hurt us. My goodness, at best, it's meant to open our eyes so that we can truly become blessed. And so you're going to have people that are going to resist, and you're going to have people who aren't going to resist. And I promise you, not very much in front of us, you will begin to see people whose spiritual powers are increasing, and you will begin to start hearing about stuff that people are doing, healings and things. I believe it's coming. I've been preaching this message for 30 years, that there's going to be one day when we're going to walk in the power that we were meant to, all the way back to 30 years ago. So hopefully, I hope you brothers and sisters out there can hear it. Source loves you. We're all broken. We all have flaws, many. But on the other side, we don't have to stay who we have been. The beauty of it is that's our freedom. We have the freedom to do that. I don't know how long that will exist or if it will always exist. There's been some channelings that free will is being done away with. And of course, as you've already seen, that wasn't a foreign concept, that spirits speak through people. So when you see a channeling, some of you probably don't even watch them. You really should. You're finding out supernatural information. And if you'll watch it and listen to it and then watch our society, you'll see whether it happens or not for yourself, and then you'll know whether it is. It's not hard. The Bible tells us to try everything. I look for things that I believe, and I look for them, and oftentimes I see them happening. Like what's going on all over the earth at the same time. That's not happenstance. That's fact. So shalom to each and every one of you. I hope you really are blessed. I hope you have the most amazing new year. If you need a purpose for the new year, the purpose of the new year is may you find who you truly are. What an amazing concept. Anyways, Heart Center, namaste. Shalom to each and every one of you. May you have a greater day in front of you every day.